Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome back. This is a history video that we're going to talk about that how did the bubonic plague spread across Europe? And it wasn't from rats. And this is an article we got from um, history.com. And this is going to talk about the origin of the Black Death, aka the bubonic plague. And I think this video is going to be good because it's going to highlight what really happened to Europe in the early middle age, or the, I guess, late mid to late middle ages, when Europe started to have a change in the demographics of its population of people. So let's talk about it. All right. So rats did not spread the Black Death. It was humans. So scientists now believe the plague spread too fast for rats to be the culprits. This article came out in 2018 in August. So let's check it out. Rats have been blamed for spreading the Black Death around Europe in the 14th century. Specifically, historians have speculated that the fleas on the rats are responsible for the estimated 25 million plague deaths between 1347 and 1351. Wow, that's 4 years that 25 million people died in Europe. That's incredible. So, however, a new study suggests that rats weren't the main carriers of fleas and lice that spread the plague. It was humans. Interesting. In a study published in January 2017 in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, researchers simulated Black Death outbreaks in European cities to try and understand how the plague was spread. In their simulations, they looked at three possible models for infections: rats, airborne transmission, and fleas and ticks that humans carry around in them or with them on their bodies and clothes. There's a picture of the flea infected with the plague. So, in most of the cities, the model that focused on the fleas and the ticks on humans was the most accurate model for explaining the spread of the disease. Though it may come as a surprise to most readers, previous studies have backed up these findings. The consensus seems to be that the plague spread too fast for rats to be the culprit carriers. It would be unlikely to spread as fast as it did if it was transmitted by rats. Niels Stenseth, a professor at the University of Oslo and co-author of Monday's study, told BBC News it would have to go through the extra loop of the rats rather than being spread from person to person. It is not clear where the belief that rats spread the plague came from, and in the first place, after all, the researchers write that there is little historical and archaeological support for such a claim. For example, if rats really were a main cause of the plague, there will be more archaeological evidence of dead rats. See, and the reason why he's saying that it's not clear where this belief came from is because there were the historians, or the the people who made the found the original articles of this back in the late 1800s. Those were the Caucasian scholars who they found the real accurate data, but they burned it and then they created a lie. So now you have a whole new generation of historians, and they're trying to figure out, how did their forefathers got all this information wrong. It's not that they got it wrong; they actually knew the truth, but they lied to actually preserve their further generations because they understood the origin of where the bubonic plague came from. It wasn't from rats; it was, like the article is saying, it came from humans. And as we continue to read on, we're going to figure out who were those humans. I think that's it. That's all is for this article. But this just shows in a history article that rats did not spread the plague. So let's go into another one. This is the article from the BBC. This also came in 2018 in January. So let's see. Black Death spread by humans, not rats. You see a picture of this big old rat. Let's zoom in a little bit. All right. So the bite of a rat-borne fleas infected with the bubonic plague has been blamed for disease transmission during the medieval pandemic. Rats were not to blame for the spread of the plague during the Black Death, according to the study. The rodents and their fleas were thought to have spread a series of outbreaks in 14th through 19th century Europe, but a team from the University of Oslo and Ferrara now says the Black Death can be largely ascribed to human fleas and body lice. Hold on to that. body lice, because we're going to get to that in a little bit. The study in the proceedings of the National Academy of Science uses records of its pattern and scale. The Black Death claimed an estimated 25 million lives, more than a third of Europe's population between 1347 and 1351. And we have good mortality data from outbreaks in 9 cities in Europe. Professor Niels Stenstedt from the University of Oslo told BBC News. So we could construct models of the disease dynamics there. He and his colleagues then simulated disease outbreaks in each of these cities, creating these models where the disease was spread by either rats, airborne transmission, fleas, and lice that live on humans and their clothes. So we just read this in another article, but let's keep going. In a 7 out of the 9 city study, the human parasite model was a much better match for the pattern of outbreak. It mirrored how quickly it spread and how many people it affected. The conclusion was very clear, said Professor Stenstedt. The lice model fits best. It would be unlikely to spread as fast as it did if it was transmitted by rats. It would have to go through this extra loop of rats rather than being spread from person to person. So Professor Stenstedt said the study was primarily of historical interest, using modern understanding of disease to unpick what had happened during one of the most devastating pandemics in human history. But he pointed out understanding as much as possible about what goes on during the epidemic, as is always good if you are to reduce mortality in the future. Plague is still endemic in some countries of Asia, Africa, and Americas, where it persists in reservoirs of infected rodents, especially in the Southwest, like Arizona, New Mexico area. There's the plague or Yersinia pestis still lives in rats, the fleas that live on rats. That still is pretty endemic in that area or in those areas. According to the World Health Organization from 2010 to 2015, there were 3,248 cases reported worldwide, including 584 deaths. In 2001, a study that decoded the plague genome used a bacterium that had come from a vet in the U.S. that had died in 1992 after a plague infested cat sneeze on him, as he had been trying to rescue it from underneath a house. Our study suggests to prevent future spread, hygiene is most important, said Professor Stenstedt. It is also it also suggests that if you're ill, you should come in contact with too many people, or you shouldn't come in contact with too many people. So if you're sick, stay at home. All right. So I want to just emphasize this one because they emphasize right here that it came from body lice. So they also confirmed that the Black Death or the bubonic plague didn't come from rats. It came from fleas that comes from humans and body lice. All right. Now, in order to have body lice, really any lice, you have to have hair, right? So you usually have hair in, your top of your head and your pubic area. But they said body lice. So in order to have body lice, you have to have a lot of body hair, correct? All right. So a lot of people know where I'm going, but let's keep going. This is another article. This is from the Science website, Science and Archaeology, but it says that ancient DNA traces the Black Death to Russia's Volga region. Now, if people who don't know where the Volga region is, that's actually uh, that is right here. That's in Central Asia, and Central Asia, connects right here. That's around this part of near Georgia. That's where the Caucasus Mountains come from, right? Goes right into the Caspian Sea. But this is where the Caucasus Mountains is. So these people that came from this area, they were the people who came from the Caucasus area or the Caucasus Mountains, aka certain groups of Caucasians came out of that land. So let's read about this. In the 14th century, the Black Death wiped out as much as 60% of the population in Europe, spreading rapidly from the shores of the Black Sea to Central Europe. Although historical records first document its appearance in 1346 CE in the lower Volga region of Russia, researchers didn't know whether the highly virulent strain of Yersinia pestis bacterium that caused the deadly pandemic came from a single source or was introduced to Europe more than once by travelers carrying diverse strains of a plague from different parts of the ancient world. Now, by analyzing 34 ancient genomes of Yersinia pestis, from the teeth of people buried at 10 sites across Europe from the 14th to 17th centuries, including a mass grave in Toulouse, France. Above, researchers at the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Jena, Germany, have found the earliest known evidence of the pandemic comes from Lashivo in Russia Volga's region. Their researchers found a strain of Yersinia pestis that was ancestral to all other genomes they studied, differing by only one mutation from those that caused the Black Death in Europe. They report today in Nature Communications. That doesn't mean that the Volga region was ground zero for the Black Death. It could have come from elsewhere in Western Asia, where scientists have yet to sample ancient DNA of Yersinia pestis. The researchers found that once the plague made it to Europe, a single strain was responsible for the Black Death from Italy to the United Kingdom. So that took basically the whole area of Europe, all the way from Southern Europe all the way to Northern Europe to the UK. This strain also gave rise to other variants of Y. pestis that caused deadly plague outbreaks from the late 14th to the 18th centuries. This suggests the bacterium persisted locally in Europe, perhaps in rodent hosts, where it evolved in diverse strains that caused later epidemics. And we know that in the previous articles, it wasn't rodent hosts, it was human hosts. And, as you've seen on this channel before, I said that the original Europeans, they were, people of color, they were so-called black people, especially in the UK and the British Isles. So as we see that as the people who come from this area, from the Caucasus, they came and they marched up into Europe and they spread these diseases. But let me get into some historical evidence about that, make those claims, right? I don't want to just be saying things. All right. So this is an article, or actually, this is a painting. This is a tapestry of wild men in the Moors. This is actually in a museum, I think in Boston. Yeah, a Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. It's called the Tapestry of the Wild Men in the Moors. This is circa 1440. This was when it was made, but of course we know the Black Death spread in the 1300s. So this painting is about the 1300s. So let's zoom in a little bit. So as you see, these wild men, they're coming to these people of the Moors, and with just in general history, the Moors were, the so-called Black Europeans who ruled Europe at that time. And as we could just zoom in a little bit, you see the wild men, and you see they have long beards and all this green stuff right here. That's the representation of hair, because as you see their feet, you can see their hands and all this stuff. This isn't clothes. This is actually body hair. And so they were coming and attacking and conquering the nobility at the time, who were so-called black people. And as you see how they're dressed, this is around prior to the 1200s, really 1200s, 1300s. As you see, that's the king, that's the queen. That's them fighting against the wild men. That's him trying to call for help. But you see, they were trying to fight them off with bows and arrows or swords, but you got to understand the wild men, they were carrying these diseases that they've been immune to from living in that area, in the Caucasus area. And they've been there for centuries. So they're coming out of those places or those caves, and they're bringing these diseases to Europe. And that's how a large population of people in Europe died. And that's why they called the bubonic plague the quote unquote Black Plague, or the Black Death, because a large portion of people who were black or quote unquote black died, because they always tell the truth through jokes or through jest. So this is a real painting. This is not something that is just on the internet being used to propagate some type of fake black history. This is real. So see, this is based in Germany, but this is in the Museum of Fine Arts. So they really know real history, but they just kind of cover it up. Oh, this is something too. I wanted to put this out. Where is it? This is an article, or this is a page out of this book called Arthur Kessler, The 13th Tribe. That's a very controversial book, but this is a page in the book. I believe this is around 39, page 39, where it talks about this is going to give us a little bit more evidence of of the things that we read about with the body lice. So it says, accustomed to the splendid baths of Baghdad, our traveler could not get over the dirtiness of the Turks. The Turks, these are the Turks who conquered really a large portion of the middle, what we call the Middle East and North Africa. So it said the Ghus, which is a tribe of the Turks, do not wash themselves after defecating or urinating, nor do they bathe after seminal pollution or on other occasions. So they don't bathe, they don't wash themselves. They refuse to have anything to do with water, particularly in the winter. When the Ghus commander in chief took off his luxurious coat of bronchate to don a new coat the mission had brought him, they saw that his underclothes were fraying apart from dirt, for it is their custom never to take off the garment they wear close to their bodies until it disintegrates. Another Turkish tribe, the Bashkirs, shave their beards and eat their lice. What? They eat their lice? They search the folds of their undergarments and crack the lice with their teeth. And when Abin Fadlan watched a Bashkir do this, the latter remarked to him, "They are delicious." So this is confirming the things that we've been reading, that the lice were spread by body lice. And this is actually an account by Abin Fadlan. He was a Muslim historian. You can read about his adventures online, but this is just one of his recallings of stories of when he met some of the Turkish tribes. So we see that there were different tribes that spread across Europe, and they had, this was their custom, that they didn't wash themselves, they didn't bathe, so they carried a lot of diseases around with them. All right. All right, let's go. Let's keep going. Let's read a little bit about the Turks. The Turkish people, where do they come from? Let's go right here. The Turkish people. Let's say this. The early Turkish people descended from agricultural communities in Northeast Asia who moved westward to Mongolia in the 3rd millennium BC, where they adopted a pastoral lifestyle. By the early 1st millennium BC, these people had become equestrian nomads. In subsequent centuries, the steppes population of Central Asia appeared to have been progressively replaced and Turkified by East Asian nomadic Turks moving out of Mongolia. So these people, they lived in Central Asia. Yeah, so we know that's kind of like a mix of um, what we call modern Turkey, Georgia, the Middle East, what they saying right here. I guess more of like a West Russia, Kazakhstan, uh, Tajikistan, Turkestan, that area. So it says in Central Asia, earliest surviving Turkish languages text found in the 8th century. Orkhan inscription monuments were erected by the Gok Turks in the 6th century CE, include words not common to Turkish but found in unrelated inter-Asian languages. Although ancient Turks were nomadic, they traded wool, leather, carpets, and horses for wood, silk, vegetables, and grain, as well as having large iron working stations in the south of Altai Mountains during the 600s BC or CE. Yeah, okay. And then I guess some of them Turks converted to Islam when it spread to that area. All right. Let's go a little bit more into this is articles about the wild men. I just want to show a little bit of pictures to kind of confirm what we're talking about. So when it says the wild man or wild man of the woods or wood rose, it's a mythical figure that appears in art and literature in the medieval Europe compared to the satyr and faun type in classic mythology and the Sylvanus, the Roman god of the woodlands. So they try to mythologize this, but this wasn't a myth. These were real people. These were just the what we would call really the ancient version of the Caucasian. And as you can see, we zoom in, it just looks like an old Caucasian man with a lot of body hair. And they used to carry the um the shield, the coat of arms for the nobility at that time. Now we see right here they have this, but the nobility at the time were so-called black people, so that would have been a so-called black man. You actually can kind of see this afro. They kind of widen his face. All right. But right here, you see late 15th century tapestry of Basel showing a wood rose being tamed by a virtuous lady. And that also would be a so-called woman of color. You can even see a little bit of her afro right there. And you see with the body hair right there. That's not pants, though. That's all hair. Uh, and you see the fight in the forest. It's a knight fighting a wood rose, or a wild man. Um, Even like this. They used to have plays just like how the people would paint themselves in blackface, like how they do in Germany, like that holiday Saint Pete. The black nobility at that time, they would had dressed up as wild men. They would have their some of their servants dressed in hairy garments and make plays like that. As you can see, you see the afro. These are so-called black women. They just widen the faces. But Europe, before the bubonic plague or the Black Death, before what a third of the population died, the majority of the people were so-called black people. And right after the Black Death, you can read that in the 1300s, you started having serf rebellions in I think around like 1360, 1370s, because the serfs, or the servants who were the Caucasians at the time, they were tired of getting bossed around. They started to rebel, and that's when things started to change in Europe. So, so that's just a little history of Europe. Hopefully, someone got some out of it, and